G'day Adam, an absolute privilege to have you here today at the TRT Live event, even though we've had to do a pre-recording because of difficulties with internet and the time difference. I remember way back 12, 13 years ago being back in Australia and seeing you for the first time on your YouTube channel, where I was sitting in the 40-degree heat waiting for the dial-up to load up, 1 second of you doing a demonstration instructional video on perfecting the cattleman's crack in the snow, which was of course really bizarre for me. But you were inspired initially from an Indiana Jones movie. You started whip cracking at the age of 9. Now an accomplished whip cracker with an incredible amount of achievements. How did you go from, what was that step you took from an accomplished whip cracker into a whip maker? For us as horse trainers, of course, we're also working on a certain craft in learning about the horse and trying to perfect our skills as a horse trainer. And during that process, you often go into the craft of making training aids and halters and things like this. So as this step, when was it that you went from being an accomplished whip cracker into the whip making, and did this give you an appreciation, a better appreciation maybe of other whip makers and other whip crackers, and then did it improve your skills as a professional whip cracker?
Actually, my whip making came shortly after I got into whip cracking. So I wanted a whip because of Indiana Jones, which I saw in 1989. And then my dad made me a rope whip, but I always wanted to have a better whip. And this is well before the internet, so I thought my only choice as like a kid is to learn to make my own. So my parents got me some books, and they got me some leather from a local shoe company, and I started making my own whips. And I actually sold my first whip in 1992. And I would say for all my teenage years, I really identified as a whip maker and not so much as a whip cracker. Now, having made so many whips, does that give me an appreciation for other whip makers? I would say at a certain point, I've always appreciated the good work of other whip makers that I admired. People like David Morgan, of course, who made the whips for the Indiana Jones movies, so always an inspiration to me. But more so, I'd say what I really appreciate of other whip makers, and it's always the common thing where you appreciate something that you can't do. So I found what I'm not cut out for is the day-to-day grind of cranking out the same thing day after day, just standard models for people that want a basic whip. Like, I just want to do a couple cracks with it. Like, that is not my thing at all. I tried making whips full-time for a couple years, and it wasn't a really good fit for me, and I'm much happier now that I get to do shows most of the time, and then I can make whips when I feel like it. And has making whips improved my whip cracking at all? Well, when I got, I'd say after college, when I became a more serious whip cracker, I was actually just buying whips from other whip makers to crack. I wasn't necessarily making the whips that I was cracking myself. And because those whips were readily available, it's only been in instances where, say, I want to do something specific with a whip, and then I find I can't buy what I want to use for that trick, that then I'll go ahead and make what I need to get better at that trick. So I got a bunch of whips here. I made all these, and I'm not going to go through all of them because that would be kind of long, but like the whip I'm holding here, this is a design I came up with for a stock whip to be better at doing a trick called the 4 corners, and it requires a really supple whip. And so I tried to start with a design of the same whip I had been practicing with, but improve it a little bit, basically just changing giving it a little bit finer of a taper, making it a little bit more supple, and I made the handle lighter, so that way it was a whip that made it easier for me to learn this trick that I had spent years learning. And another set of whips I guess I'll point out would be, this is a set that a set similar to what I use to set a record for most whip cracks in a minute with 2 whips. I formerly held that record at 646 whip cracks in a minute. I'm not the current holder now, but basically I just made myself a really short set of stock whips that cracked about as good as I thought they could. And in that instance, in the same instance like with this stock whip for the 4 corners, it was easier for me to try to do my own experimenting and come up with my own design than to try to talk to another whip maker and explain what I wanted and try to buy something. So yeah, in some ways, for some tricks, designing my own whips certainly helps.
So to be a good horse person or a horse trainer, you have to get skilled up. You have to have good self-awareness and good self-reflection, and you have to be able to move on to the next technique or the next new approach. You have an incredible array of skills. What is your process in being able to get skilled up, or being able to learn something totally new, or being able to go the next level up on a skill you already have?
So I wrote 4 basic things I think I regularly do when I'm learning a new skill, so I'm just going to read them off. One, I try to make friends with people that already have that skill so I can see it in person. Some kids nowadays can really learn stuff through video. I've seen some extremely talented young whipcrackers learn tons of tricks just watching video. I myself, for most of the stuff that I learn, I'll try to see it in person, and usually there is a way, your brain soaks up stuff in a different way, in a better way, when you can see it in person in front of you than when you're just watching a video of it. Also, I make daily practice a priority. And for some people it's not possible, but particularly if you're learning a new skill and you want to make some progress with it, or you learn something and you want to hold on to it, it's good if you can take like a length of time. I would recommend try like 4 weeks to a month, or maybe even 2 months. Pick out that period of time and make it a daily priority to practice that new skill every day. I've known some people that like go to a convention and learn a skill like lasso spinning, and then they do 3 days of intensive stuff and they learn stuff they never believed they could learn, and then they put it down as soon as they go home because life gets in the way, and then 6 months later they think, oh, I've got some time, I should go back to doing that lasso spinning that I learned, and then all the skills are gone. Everything that they thought they learned just didn't really stick. So that commitment to daily practice for a certain period of time is what I think a person needs to get a skill to sink in. And I think it's also very important when learning a new skill to become a part of a community that is actively performing or learning that skill. So that way you can like share what you're learning, you can watch what other people are learning and their developments, and it sort of creates a community where people can reinforce each other in learning that skill. So definitely with skills I work on, such as the whip cracking or the rope spinning, part of the reason I'm always posting videos is that way other people can watch it and comment on it and reinforce what I'm doing, or maybe comment on what I'm doing, and I can watch what other people are doing and be inspired by that or comment on what they're doing. So it's good to be a part of a community, and it also it's a good way to make friends, and it sort of reinforces that skill as a part of your identity of who you are. Because I think that's something that's really important when learning a skill, is do you identify as a person who does this skill? So like I did dancing in college, and definitely some people looked at their social dancing, like swing dancing, as a part of who they are. And as soon as you take a skill and make it a part of who you are, you feel like, oh, I'm the one that does that skill, I have to do it. And that really deepens your commitment to learning it. And then to level up on skills, it's just one idea that I have. So probably the skill that I spent the most number of years or the longest period working on is this trick called the staggered 4 corners. And it took me a while to get it, and I'd like to think I'm fairly proficient at it now. It's not even the most impressive trick I can do. It's just to a general audience. It's just a trick that I personally wanted to be able to do. But that's how hard tricks go, is that they're never the flashiest thing to a general audience. It's only the people that have worked on the trick that appreciate it. But anyway, in learning it, I sort of have this philosophy that there's always going to be a series of stepping stones between what you can do and what you want to do, and then it's your job, or probably your teacher's job if you have a good teacher, to find what are all the little stepping stones or all the little intermediate points in between what you can do and what you want to do. So it's important to establish which parts, like if you are trying to do this thing you want to learn, like which parts of it you don't have, so you can isolate that, and then try to come up with exercises to strengthen your weak parts there. So with the staggered 4 corners, that was definitely a process for me, is trying to come up with all of the different things I could try in between what I could do and the staggered 4 corners to eventually get to that trick. And of course there were a lot of dead ends along the way, but I think that's just the hard part of learning and experimenting, is you have to sort of appreciate the journey more than being in a rush to get there, and hopefully you're more interested in discovering new ways to try to get something, as opposed to being the kind of person that only has enough time to work on just the right way to get there, otherwise I'm just going to give up. If Thomas Edison would have been like that, we'd never have the light bulb. So that's my idea for like leveling up, is just trying to break things down as small as you can, so that way to get to the skill you want, you're always just working on little minuscule things that are achievable to try to get to there.
So what are the things that inspire you, Adam? When I follow you on Instagram, you're coming up with the newest crazy things every day, from cracking a 30-foot bull whip and setting off a rat trap, to cracking tops off beers, your little sketches with the knife throwing with your dog. Really, really creative stuff. What is it that gets you in the zone? When are you really on fire, and what are the elements that really put you there?
In truth, I would say I'm definitely not the most creative person I know. I don't actually spend a whole lot of time making up stuff, but I would say what I do probably more than a lot of other people is I'm very studious. Whereas like I'd like to be aware of everything else that's going on in the whip cracking world, and I do my best to give all of it a try. So some people in the whip cracking world really pick one specific area that they're going to work on, say like whip tosses, and be like, all right, that's my thing. That's all I'm going to do, and I'm not going to try to learn as much of what other whip crackers are doing. But I guess I looked at it as, no, I want to be aware of and try some of what everyone else out there is doing. And then hopefully once I've given that a try, I might in some cases get lucky, discover something like, oh, I can't quite do what they're doing, but I can take that and change it a little bit, and it ends up being more of my own thing. So that doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen some of the time for me. So the video I did with my wife's dog Pamela, I'd say that inspiration for that came out of, one, we're a little bit bored this summer having shows canceled, and I wanted to have a creative outlet, and I was watching a lot of videos on TikTok, and a lot of the videos were cut in such a way that it could imply that some action is happening when that action obviously never really happened. Another question, what gets me in the zone? So I'm not sure if I'm as much of an in the zone person as are other flow artists. Some flow artists approach like object manipulation as sort of a meditative exercise where you just keep doing it and all of a sudden you're in a meditative trance. I guess I'm always, most of the time when I go out to practice, I always have a specific skill that I'm working on or trying to develop, and so it's more about like, ooh, is this thing working now? Is it not working? As opposed to like being in a Zen type state. But I would say, as far as getting in the zone, one thing that does help me when I'm trying to do that is to make videos of myself when I'm cracking whips. So it really helps if, say, I'm taking a video of myself doing a specific trick and I have an idea in my head of like how good I am at that trick. Well, if I start videotaping myself and I see, oh, I'm not as good as I thought I was, then I'll just keep taking shot after shot of myself doing that trick until I do it as well as I think I can. And then I post that video, and then I've got a record of basically how well I can do that trick when I'm really warmed up and into it. And then when I go back and look through my old videos, they can inspire me to either want to work on that trick or just remember that trick and then go back and work on it.
So I think I read somewhere, maybe on your Facebook profile, that you were interested in Swedish language films. Now, was this you just filling in the caption there, or you're actually sitting watching films in Swedish?
My interest in Swedish language movies sort of comes out of my semester abroad that I spent in Sweden as a college student. And part of the reason I wanted to go to Sweden and study Swedish is my fascination with Indiana Jones. So not only could Indiana Jones crack a whip, in the Young Indiana Jones series they made it seem as though he could speak any foreign language. So I thought that'd be a neat experience to go to a foreign country and learn a foreign language. And some people would say, well, Swedish is not the most useful foreign language to learn. There's only about 8 to 9 million native speakers of it in Sweden. Well, part of that reason is that in my college, if you wanted to go to the country and learn the language there, you only had 2 choices. You could either go to Sweden and learn Swedish, or you could go to Latvia and learn Latvian. So I picked Swedish. And then when I got home, I spent a lot of time watching Ingmar Bergman movies, because that was about all I could get to keep on learning Swedish. And I'd almost say out of all the topics I studied in college, like I did a double major in math and physics, I probably spent the most time after school studying Swedish out of any of the other topics that I studied as a college student. And I know you guys out there are mostly a horse crowd, so I do have one trick I'd like to share with you that specifically goes out to horse lovers. This one's called the Philandy hoof beats, and the idea is to get the cracks of the whip to mimic the sound of a horse's hoof beats going from a walk to a trot to a canter to a gallop. So give that a try. We start out at a walk. And then a trot. And a canter. And a gallop. That was the Philandy hoof beats. And I do make a living doing shows around the US at festivals, doing something I call the fire whip show. So naturally, I'm gonna light a couple whips on fire. Yada-da-da, yada-da-da-da. That's hot. Well, my name's Adam Winrich. Thanks for watching.